Hi, and welcome to another episode of Coaches, Conversation, and Coffee. I'm Karen Angell, Assistant AD for Communications at American University. I'm joined today by our two head soccer coaches. We've got Zach Samol from men's soccer and Marsha Harper from women's soccer. Thank you both for coming on the show today. So here's the situation. We are not playing fall sports. The Patriot League postponed with the hope of playing in the spring. We've got American University holding all classes online this semester, which means our student athletes are not on campus, not training, not practicing. Now, athletics and the university are working really closely together for an eventual return to training. But can you tell us, what's the status of your programs right now? How have you been communicating? And what's your focus when we get that eventual return?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Our program, just like most of the fall sports student athletes, we're really looking forward to the fall season, but we've had the girls redirect their attention to what they can do individually during this time. So we're certainly meeting as a team via Zoom, but the girls have spent a lot of time, I would say, over the last 6 months, working on themselves individually, and also really diving into the mental side of the game. So a lot of individual work, I would say, with us.
Well, with men's soccer, it is a tough time. So I think the guys, we do spend time on Zoom, but as you know, Zoom is only effective in certain ways, and so I think we spend a lot of time doing small group work. We do a lot of small group positional work right now. We are trying to focus on certain teams out there. So having pro soccer back is nice on TV. I think one of the teams we like to watch is Atletico Madrid. So we do some of that. And I think, as Marsha just said, even though you're not playing soccer right now, the goals still don't change. So you still want them to become the best soccer player that they can be individually, and you still want the team to develop. So I think those goals don't change. So you're still trying to get those goals across to the team, and you're just trying to do it in a different way. So.
Right. So we've been in this situation now, obviously since March, and the student athletes have had to deal with a lot, like everybody around the country. Everyone's dealing with a lot. But what have you seen from your athletes? What kind of reactions have you seen, and what maybe has surprised you or impressed you in some ways?
What I would say in general is just with all the unknown, it's months and months of unknowns, and you just don't know what the future is going to bring. And I think through that, what impresses me the most is just their patience, their resilience, but also just lack of asking questions, because they know those answers can't be answered. You can't get answers to those questions right now. And so I would just say to them, I'm kind of impressed by their ability to look at the whole situation and say, yes, coach, we understand. We're not gonna ask you all these questions right now because we know they just can't get answered. So for me, I'm impressed with kind of their ability to kind of look at the overall picture, and live day by day the way that we have to right now. So that's what impressed me the most.
Yeah, I would piggyback on what Zach said, and certainly the resiliency has been key. And diving in a little bit more, they've expressed their nature in that way by finding something new, whether it's every day or every week, every month, whether it's taking on a new hobby of cooking, or, maybe they weren't the best long distance runner. So now they're diving into, finding out the joy of finding themselves on a longer run, right? I've certainly been impressed with the women on my team and their resiliency, but I would say more or less finding a way to keep themselves excited. And that's tough. It certainly has been a roller coaster of emotions, starting in the spring, going through the summer, and then now in the fall. But their ability to get themselves back on track and find something that motivates them and keeps them going and driven, I would say, resiliency is a big thing. And it's certainly impressive with the student athletes that we work with.
And Marsha, I know your team in particular has, tackled some other issues, social justice issues. and really been at the forefront of some of that. Can you talk about, what led to that and what you've seen from them?
Yeah, so I mean, the women on my team are, I feel like we're kind of cut from the same cloth. It's a blessing and a curse. We can all talk, right? So it's been awesome during this period to see them not only express their interests and their passions, but also like actually taking action. Hey, coach, can we do this? And I mean, they've been throwing so many different ideas, and it's been awesome. I'm like, yeah, here, take the reins, and trying to use their individual platforms as well as our team platform to talk about things that they really care about. In terms of the racism and social injustice, our team has been really vocal about that. Our girls have also been really vocal about mental health. They've used our platform in a phenomenal way, and it's all player driven. So that for me is exciting, right? The same thing like on the soccer field. We give them ideas in training, and then the game hits and you're just hoping, that they kind of take the reins. And it's awesome to see that translate off the soccer field into real life. And I think that's why we all do what we do as coaches and people in athletics is, seeing the young people develop and finding themselves in life. So I've been really impressed with the women on my team and their courage to speak up about things, but also certainly take action and be consistently pushing the needle in that way.
That's great. And I know we'll kind of be going back and forth between positives and negatives. Obviously, it's been a tough situation, and you can always hopefully find a silver lining. But I mean, there's no doubt it's been really hard. And you both are fairly new. Marsha, you're just entering your first full year at AU. You haven't actually had a soccer season yet. And Zach, you're in your second full year. But, this is your livelihood. You've both been in soccer and sports for a long time. I mean, what's really the hardest part of a fall without sports for you?
Ooh, that's easy. Not coaching, I mean, I think the hardest part about this whole thing is you're not doing what you love, do I like talking to you right now on this Zoom call? Sure, it's great, but like what I really love is being out on the field and coaching. And so I think we're missing what we really love to do. And I think that's the hard part. And I think that the players are missing what they really love to do. We're all missing what we really love to do. So I think the hardest part about the fall for me is that. So I am trying to substitute that with keeping soccer in my life, having more family in my life, I guess, too, and then finding some other ways to use my energy. So it's tough though. I keep going back every month and every week, and it's like I'm missing what I really want to do, and I just want to become a coach again, and not this other person that we have to be during COVID. So that's the tough part.
Yeah, and I would, jump on that and say, I mean, I had 2.5, 3 months with the girls in person when I got hired, and then they went on spring break and never came back. Yeah. And, we're, as humans, we like interacting with other humans, right? And so that in-person contact is something that you can't replicate on Zoom. We can get close, and we have been, and we've certainly been trying to maximize, all of our resources virtually, but that in-person contact where, student athletes not getting something, you wrap your arm around their shoulder and pull them in and say, hey, that's like what drives me. And, what I wouldn't give someone who's to literally just smell grass again, like actual on the field grass is, I don't know, it's really tough. And that certainly personally has been a challenge. And, then you find yourself designing training sessions, and I feel like I have every training session written down for an entire season. But when you're training, you might need to make a change based on what you see in training that day with actual humans, right? And so there's something that you can't necessarily replicate with in-person training, but we've trying to maximize the tactical side, I would say, of the game. And Zach talked about watching soccer more. Blessing that is we're able to do that. Both men's and women's are back on TV, and using all of the resources that we have available at AU to help our team grow tactically is something that our program has really been pushing. But what I wouldn't give to hand out a penny, put down a cone, pick up a cone, but you got to make do, I guess, with what you have. So.
And we've talked a lot about your current teams, but one of the hardest things, no doubt, during all this time is your recruiting strategy. It has to be totally different than anything you've done before. Can you talk about that process and what it's been like for you?
I got it. Yeah, I'll jump in. So, myself and my assistant Katie, obviously we're both new, and so that was going to be a big push for us, anyways. But Zoom, social media, that's all been a really big part of our recruiting effort. I would say that that's how Katie and I spend most of our day, is recruiting. When we're not on a team call or when we're not on an individual player call with one of our current players, we are recruiting virtually. And we've been really getting after it in that way. And I would like to think that that's certainly going to pay dividends down the line. But that's how, to be honest, that's what I do most of the day, is recruiting. So, but all virtual, right? So it's interesting. It's certainly interesting. And we've seen that also through the recruits and their families. It's been a really tough time for recruits. But I feel like our role, obviously, as coaches on the college level, is to try and calm down recruits and their families, and try and, not be a part of a problem where they're committing too early, right? Or they're not having all the information that they need. So Katie and I, my assistant, we've been spending a lot of time trying to really get to know families. And to be honest, I think it's been great to be able to dig a little bit deeper with families, recruits and their families, that I might not have been able to. So it's there's a silver lining in there, certainly, but that's been a big part of our efforts.
Yeah, so as Marsha just talked about, you don't have much choice right now with recruiting, and it's virtual. So as Marsha says, you are using Zoom, and you are watching a lot of video on your computer, and this is what you're doing. You're recruiting at home. So it's a challenge. I think one of the things I always talk about with recruits is like, we're going to recruit and we're going to do what we can do, but it's all a substitute for the real thing in a way. And that's what COVID is. So it is a substitute. And I think one of the nice places about AU is, actually stepping foot on campus, actually spending time with the people here is kind of what makes AU special. So I think when you're missing that piece, it can be really hard, especially a place like this. That's what I think. So we're doing our best, right? We're doing our best, but it is a substitute. And I think on the second, one of the bigger things that I think about as well is, and Marsha has a different situation, I guess a little bit, but not really. But we have our first recruiting class is our 2020 recruiting class, and they're here, but they're not here. So, so we're not training them. We know them, but we're not training them. We're not putting them in our systems. We're not seeing exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to develop. We're not seeing exactly what position they might play. And without that knowledge, it does make recruiting a little bit difficult as well, because you learn a little bit more about your squad. You learn about what your needs are. You learn about what holes that need to be filled and what holes maybe don't need to be filled. Somebody always comes in and surprises you in a positive way and a negative way. So these things you're not learning right now, and that also makes recruiting a little bit tougher. So you're working, you're doing it, but there are some challenges to it for sure.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about, needing to see your current recruits to recruit the next ones. Mm-hmm. Kind of with expectations and planning. If we play starting in February, let's go with the assumption that, we're going to play fall sports in the spring. It's going to start at some point. How do you adjust your expectations for a whole different kind of season? How do you prepare your teams for that?
Wow. I was hoping you would answer that before me. I think it's going to be tough, because I'm looking at it right now. Marsha and I both know February 3rd is like the start of when you could have your first game. We get back to school January 11th, so you don't have much time in there, whether it's January 11th or before that. You don't have much time in there to get the team ready. You have cold weather. You have COVID still going on. You have, I think it's going to be really tough. And so for our team in particular, we are going to try to be integrating 10 freshmen and 3 transfers into the team already. And I think our challenge will be how quickly we can integrate that group with the current group and get things off and rolling. And in my experience, that takes time. And so, I think a month is a tough sell for me. I think we might need more time than that, given the constraints, given COVID, given the weather. I think that stuff could be difficult, but that's the goal. So we have to prepare now, as a staff, to try to figure out, well, how do we get these guys integrated and up and going as quick as possible? Let's come February 3rd, or come mid-February, or come spring break, March time, whenever we get started. So.
Yeah, and I would just say to that point, gelling, having your program gel together, whether it's on or off the field, like Zach was talking about, is crucial. And I think we're all going to have to adjust to a cliche, new normal, so to speak, right? With all of the protocols, and then if, different phases of re-entry, small group training, then you have to figure out a way, okay, well, I'm training 8 to 10 players. How can I get that camaraderie of a full team, right? How can I get that? How can I start that process of gelling, so to speak? So that's certainly going to be interesting. I think the biggest thing is getting people used to a new normal, because it certainly will be different. And, then there's the residual effects of kind of the mental side of that, now transitioning into, the girls weren't necessarily training as a group. Now we're going to be training to some capacity. It's different, but it's still a lot, right? Their bodies, they weren't used to training. So then you talk about the physical component of that re-entry period, and kind of the adjustment there from what, as a coach, you're not used to, right? You're expecting your players to be able to go 100% or relatively close to, right? When they get back on campus, and now it's going to be I hope for that, but we also have to be very smart about the implementation of things that we do physically as well as mentally. So a lot of change, but we're going to have to, as we've said, be resilient in that way. So
yeah, it sounds strange to say it, but let's hope that these are problems that we're having, because it means we're back.
Right.
So on that note, I want to thank you both for being on the show today, and join us next time for another episode of Coaches, Conversation, and Coffee.
Thanks.
Cheers.